Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. We're checking in here on Sunday, July 30th, 2023, the Boxing Source Radio Show. I'm your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source. Of course, you can support our social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also support here on YouTube. If you like the video here currently, you can hit the like button. You can also support by hitting the subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. We got a number of things that we're going to go over here for this particular episode, of course, of what happened yesterday in Las Vegas, Nevada, as the super fight for the undisputed welterweight championship took place between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. And we're going to go through what happened in that particular fight here. Now, on the jump here, I got one guest with me that's going to be chopping it up with me as long as they possibly could here. That has been on the show a few times, especially recently, and that is Zoe checking in on the building. What's going on, Zoe?
What's up, man? What's up, man? Beautiful night of boxing.
Yeah, beautiful night of boxing there. We got good pay-per-view showing there. A number of people were able to, tune in, tap into the event there, especially with the main event for the undisputed welterweight championship of the world between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. Now, of course, they had both undefeated records going into this particular bout, as Errol Spence Jr. came in as the WBC, WBA, and IBF champion, with Terence Crawford as the WBO champion. Spence there came with that record of 28-0, with Terence Crawford coming in with that record of 39-0. And, a number of people were just looking at this particular bout saying, okay, yeah, this is a 50-50 fight. This is going to be, a big event here in this particular instance between both of these fighters. And, going off of what we were seeing there in the first round, it kind of looked like it was going to be something like that. But after, round two, it was just something where we just saw Terence Crawford on a whole different level in this particular bout. And we pretty much seen it starting on round two, where, even when I was talking about this in the preview, was that you had the styles that were going into this fight, as Terence Crawford was going to be someone that was going to be on a counter-punching type of a style, which he was. But the thing about it was that people didn't really expect there too much was that Terence Crawford's reactions to Errol Spence and what he was doing was just like 2 or 3 levels faster there. I mean, they're going down over there on your side. So what's happening?
Man, I'm in the hood.
Yeah, for sure. That's right. Yeah, I forgot what you were saying up there, man. Yo, it'd be crazy out there. But yeah, man. But going back to what I was saying, man. You just seen something with Terence Crawford that just made him seem like almost 3 to 5 levels faster than Errol Spence was. And this was pretty much determined there in the second round. When you seen Errol Spence, come forward, usually with the jab or the double jab from the right. And with Terence Crawford in this particular fight, he fought this fight in a southpaw stance. And when he was coming back with the counters were just real fast, and it was like fast twitch, which is how Crawford usually reacts to a number of the punches that come at him. It's just fast twitch. It's not just the thing with power, it's just fast twitch. And Errol Spence was just, as I was saying in the fight that took place on Tuesday, like Errol Spence was just shell-shocked from the beginning. And when you seen that in the second round, when Spence got knocked down, it wasn't just the left hand counter. It was the follow-up with, the right or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That in the jab, it was pretty much like a jab, but a power jab, but still a jab nonetheless. And Errol Spence just went down on that. And that was pretty much the start of what was going down over the rest of the fight. It was just that Errol Spence's reaction time was just not there throughout the whole fight. And he was trying to execute what he was trying to do. But the thing about it was there were like 2 things. And I'll say this in reference to this, and I kind of put this on the channel earlier. The reaction time for Errol Spence was just really, really slow. And the thing that I didn't necessarily see from him was 2 things. One was the high guard that he usually has, in his previous fights. He really didn't have the high guard. One, And then two, when he was coming in, whether he was lunging in or just stepping forward with the right jab, he didn't have his left hand up. So that opened up the door for Terence Crawford to tee off on him with the counter right. And it pretty much was summarized just, going through, real fast, the seventh round where Terence Crawford was backed up to the ropes and Errol Spence just went in there with the lazy, like it looked like a lazy jab. And he had the left hand low, and Terence Crawford countered with like a hook uppercut type of a punch, and it just stopped Spence in his tracks. So like the next punch that came through, it really didn't hit him that hard, but Errol Spence already was going down from the effects of that counter punch. So a number of those times when Spence was getting knocked down, like it was like he was pretty much what I would say, like almost like paralyzed in a sense in that. And so you just seen where like Terence Crawford could do pretty much anything he wanted, and a number of times, especially like when they were at a distance, that he could see a lot of those punches coming, especially a left hand that was coming in from Errol Spence. It wasn't like like the first couple of rounds. You probably seen a little bit of success there from Errol Spence with that left hand, but after the like third, fourth, and fifth round, you really seen a number of those punches coming from Errol Spence. So it was just a matter of like, Terence Crawford just taking his time and doing his thing. And so, what ended up happening was it was just, the flurries from Terence Crawford that, forced referee Dave Chappelle, Harvey Duck to, talked about, there in round 9 for Terence Crawford to score the win, the 31st stoppage or knockout win of his professional career. He is now the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. I have another guest here coming in, checking in, and that's the boxing academic. Checking in here real quick. But Zoe, I want you to, kind of go through, what you saw in the fight here before I go into, other things that I saw,
All right,
over the rounds.
because like I told you, I can't stay for too long
Yeah.
today, so let me get this off. Number one, Terence Crawford is who I thought Terence Crawford was. One thing I did overlook in this fight because I thought this fight was going to be closer. I thought the fight that we got last night was going to get that fight after round 8. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was going to get it after round 2. What I overestimated about Spence was his resume. I know that sounds crazy, but Bud, the names might not be impressive, but he fought so many different styles. You feel me? It's different, so many different styles of fighters. You feel me? That was at championship level. Spence kind of fought, made the order dudes that just wilted under the pressure. Even in his first championship fight when he fought Kell Brook. Kell Brook was kind of doing some of the same things Bud was doing, as in like parrying the jab and then jabbing with the jab and catching him. What the difference was, he couldn't deal with the pressure for long. You feel me? And he didn't have the master counter ability Bud had. Bud completely took away the jab. It was either he would either parry the jab, slip to the outside and jab with the jab, or parry and jab with the jab, or just parry and slip and jab with the jab. And the jab was disgusting. The jab was a complete sledgehammer. Every time it hit Spence, it took Spence out of it really snapped Spence's head back. Another thing I noticed, I didn't notice this fight. I've been knew this about Spence. Spence calls himself Tim Duncan. He calls himself fundamental. He's basic, and I came to bite him in the ass. When you fighting a boxing genius, repetitiveness will bite you in your ass. You feel me? If you fighting a guy with a Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, Terence Crawford type intellect, you cannot do the same thing over and over and over again. You cannot throw that same jab over and over again and think it's gonna work. You feel me? Even in the first round, Bud threw a couple little lazy jabs out there to gauge his movement and already had his movement down packed by round 2. Why? Because Spence didn't have no other adjustment after that. All I was hearing Derek James tell him in the corner was make him feel you, walk him down, put pressure. The guy's stronger than you. He's countering you. You feel me? He got a longer reach than you. You feel me? You got to switch it up. You can't just keep doing the same jab, 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 left hook. You feel me? You can't keep doing it. And he was getting killed by the 2-1. He was getting killed by the 2-1 by Bud. You feel me? He the same mistake he always make every fight. He keeps his head in the center line. He's front foot heavy. When he plants his foot, he gets stuck in the front. He gets stuck in his front foot a lot. and that leaves him open for counters. And then against Bud, he never made an adjustment. He never changed it. Every time he got hurt, his response was to up the aggression. That was it, man. You feel me? There's no need for a rematch. There's no need for a rematch. There's like, man, this was bad, man. This was bad, man. This was bad, and I feel embarrassed as a boxing fan for thinking it was going to be close. As a person who picked Bud, I'm embarrassed.
Now, I mean, with me, I had Spence in this particular fight. Before this particular fight, going into the elements of different things that he was able to do in his previous fights. Going into this one. And like I was saying, earlier, I said a number of the things that I didn't see from that I usually see from Errol Spence, I didn't see from him in this particular instance. And one of the things that you mentioned there with Spence was that he pretty much like stood there, when he was throwing a jab or at least leaning back. He didn't even step back in his engagements. Or when he initiated the offense.
You guys and Alexander Barrera was catching them with the same punches because he was making those same mistakes. This isn't new, bro. You feel me? The film don't lie, dog. I just figured he got better at it. I figured he would have got better at it. That's what I assumed. You feel me? But the film don't lie. These are mistakes. These mistakes been there.
So I mean. So those things you had to have patched up with somebody, especially with somebody that like has that particular dimension like Terence Crawford, where he has that reach of like 74, pretty much reach of 74 in comparison to you at 72. So you had those instances where you would see Spence throw the jab and end up either missing or being out of range, and then you would see, Terence Crawford coming back.
JR.
The jab.
JR, did Spence win at any range last night? At any range did he have a success at any range? Even the vaunted inside game people were talking about, did he have a success did he win any range? Did he dominate any range of that fight? Even in the inside, he was getting small.
On the inside, he only had success in pretty much one round, and the only reason why he had success was because Crawford was kind of, taking a break. I think it was like round 5 or round 6.
I'm glad you said that.
Because the thing about it was like you seen Errol Spence kind of like go in and try to work the body and have that dedicated work to the body. Right. But it was something to where you could still see Terence Crawford say, okay, yeah, he's landing onto the body and he's working the body, but you still see those openings. And that's why I said you can't go in there with somebody that's a known counter puncher and continuously have that left hand low. That's not a good look. Even if Terence Crawford would have been able to switch stances, but like you said, like he was still landing with the 2-1, and every time he landed with the 2-1, it was like, he just paused every time that he did it. You know what I'm saying?
Wait, another thing I forgot to add on my soliloquy, but another problem I've been noticed that Spence had in every fight he has. He's too reactive to feints, and then he went up against a master feiner who could react him out of position every time and catch him. You feel me? That was another thing. You feel me? Yo, and then you just mentioned something. You said you felt Bud took his foot off the gas in round 5. I don't think he took his foot off the gas, as in like taking a break. I think he took all his foot off the gas because nobody can convince me that him and Spence ain't friends. He could have I felt like after around 3-ish. I never felt he went for the kill anytime he had him in position to. I now never seen Bud apprehensive like that. I felt like Bud, I don't know. I basically what I'm saying is Charlo was not going to get that treatment.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, they are friends. They've been friends, for a long time, like way before this. So like all of these guys that you've seen in this particular weight class or around that weight class have known each other from the amateurs on up. So like someone like, Crawford and Spence, or Crawford and Porter, or, Danny and Spence, they've all been around the same, class. So one way or another, they do know each other. So the thing with like Crawford and Spence is that yeah, they worked out what they did in order to make this fight happen. But they're definitely friends. Now, as far as like Jermell Charlo is concerned, yeah, that's a whole different story there.
He gonna
So
get killed.
I'll go into that here in a little bit. But I got the boxing academic here checking in here to talk about what went down in the fight last night. So I want boxing academic to chime in on what he saw.
Well, first thing I have to say is I got to give it up to Zoe.
Yo, yo.
Zoe was right. It definitely was Roy Jones, James Tony S. It was a fight of different levels, and it was a fight of a person who is limited, but against certain competition, they are not able to take advantage of where Spence was limited, but against a magnificent fighter like Crawford, he was able to see it, take advantage of it, and like you said, probably even coast a couple rounds while winning, with flying colors. Um, Everyone knows this, but Crawford is the best fighter in the world. That you know the body of work. Like I get it, the small guys, whoop de doo, but Crawford's the man, and if I would favor Crawford against, as Zoe just said, Charlo. Um, I I don't think Boots even ready for that.
Me
Like
too.
at some point maybe, but I'm not sure if even Boots could probably beat him. I think Thurman will be more competitive than the Errol Spence fight, but Thurman will very very well probably lose as well. And the reason why I think Thurman will be more competitive because Thurman gonna use the whole ring, and he could almost walk. He would probably try to walk Terence into shots, which is I don't even see that happening. But Terence Crawford is a very crafty fighter. He beat Spence in all aspects of the fight. Um, he won the fight. I don't mean this like movement as in running, but he won the fight off of movement, like his ability to fight when he wanted to fight. When Spence wanted to fight, Crawford beat him by the Bruce Lee. Be formless. If you want to press, I ain't gonna let you press. I'm gonna move a little bit, and then when you want to move or something, then I'm pressing you. And so he literally beat him off of movement because Spence couldn't get anything off when he was throwing shots, and then when he did throw shots, he hit his guard the whole time. Like I didn't see number three shots out the whole fight, maybe four that landed clean on Spence. Every other punch landed on his gloves or landed on his elbow
What you mean
or
on Crawford?
yeah, on Crawford. Everything that landed on Crawford landed on his guard.
I,
Um,
I gotta go, man. I gotta go, y'all boys. I catch y'all next week, bro.
All
all
right,
right.
for sure.
All right.
When Spence came on the line, as Zoe said, he's very front foot heavy. And the thing is, you can't be mad at yourself because obviously we're human, we pick wrong. But you know, I'm kind of mad at myself because, like Zoe said, these things were there, but I expected the faults of Crawford to show up a lot more. Like for example, when Spence throws the jab to the body, or even jabs in general, when he gets off the line, I described it last week as like he be in this sort of no man's land to where he be off balance in a sense because the way he fight, he still always be on the line. He don't move his head, and then when he come back to like stand up straight, he's still on the line. And so, I said that there would be opportunities for Crawford to land shots, but had I been more observant, I would have thought about it that shit, maybe that opportunity gonna happen a lot sooner. And then, Spence won't recover because, again, in his offense and his defensive positions, he's sort of limited in how he goes in his defensive positions. But the biggest thing in this fight was that Crawford was able to control Spence's jab when Spence jabbed at Crawford, and he controlled it with his hand up high, with his hand,
Yeah.
catching
Yeah.
catch, catching shots from Spence. And then the thing was the fact that Spence being that no man's land when he get back set to like blocking stuff, Crawford blocks Spence is like, taking his 1,000, 1,000 to get back set. And then by that time, Crawford then threw a two and jabbed, threw a 2-1 and jabbed, and then Spence still getting his hands back. Like he took advantage of that the whole time. Even when Spence threw the shots to the body, he was off balance. Crawford took advantage of that. And Spence, didn't really do anything to get himself off the line safely. Like he didn't throw like that extra punch or anything, like stick his arm out, because his mind was gone, very early. These two fights this week were different but very similar. It was fighters who were levels above, and then they took the mind. Now, don't get me wrong, Spence kept trying, but I'm glad that he got saved from himself because we all knew the outcome of that fight. He had opportunities to land shots, but even when he landed a shot, he buzzed Crawford a little bit, but it wasn't enough. He was so damaged. I'm saying like one of them shots you could tell, got Spence's attention and Crawford felt it, but it wasn't. He was so damaged at that point, it wasn't enough, or he was so drained that it wasn't enough to even for Crawford to even like worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Crawford was picking Spence off as he came on the line, and his counter shot, he could land anything he wanted. And at that point, when he knew that, which was very early, the fight was essentially over. As Zoe said, we shouldn't get fight two. I just, I don't want to write nobody off, but we as we get older, anyone, we are creatures of habit and repetition, and the things that Spence do that people are not able to take advantage of, Crawford is able to take advantage of. And Crawford gonna always have opportunities to hit him when he jab and get off the line, just because the way that he fights. And we weren't even able to see a different level because A, them shots weren't landing even when he threw like wild shots, and then B, just Crawford was able to see him and just take advantage of him. And yeah, man, Crawford the number one guy. I'm sure anyway is good in his own right, but that guy that I saw. Again, he beats Charlo. I want to see him fight Keith Thurman just because I think Keith Thurman earned that, the ability to fight. I don't think
I get. Yep, I see that. I see that.
I don't think that Spence going, like he said that he wanted a rematch for December, but that's not a good idea. Everybody know that, and I'm sure people will talk to him and say that. Like, give yourself a bit more time. Maybe work on some stuff, maybe fight some, creative guys, but I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Styles make fights, and that's just not a
good. Here was the thing for me that I saw in this particular fight, and immediately reacting to it, and Joe kind of like kind of hinting at it, in that a number of the fighters that Spence has fought, right? Like he's been at 147 pounds his entire career. And he's fought, guys that, some guys that have been, there 147, some that, have been, coming up from 140. But a lot of them have a certain style, or they are there at 147 and they pretty much are around the same size as Errol Spence going down to 147. So for example, if they're coming in there at like around or they walk around at like 160 or something like that, you know what I'm saying? And they get down to that 147, then they have this certain type of frame to where they have that what I would say the frame to where they have a certain style and where they and how they fight. So for me, it's like welterweights are almost like a couple step down from middleweights as far as like the movement and how they punch. But if you're coming up from like 135, 140, you still have that type of movement to get in and out, to move side to side and stuff like that, to where all you have to do is just pretty much cut down a little bit. If you're like walking around at like 147 or anything like that, you just cut down a little bit and then you keep everything that you have. So for Crawford, looking at what we saw here, a number of the guys that were, that Errol Spence faced, like Yordenis Ugas or Danny Garcia, like a lot of those guys pretty much have that type of frame where it's more of like, hey, they could be fighting at 154, 160, but they get down to 147 because one of the money, two of like what's out there within that particular division. But with Terence Crawford, he has those multiple levels where he's been there at 135, he's been there at 140, and now he's there at 147, where he's like, okay, yes, I've still been able to keep my mobility and my foot speed and also my hand speed, but still have the power to overwhelm folks at 147, especially from a lower weight class and things like that. So you do have that. Gonna go in a little bit more on this.
Can I say two more things?
Yeah, go ahead.
So two things that you alluded to. Terence Crawford was much stronger than him. Like whoever said that he deadlift whatever,
Yep,
I believe him.
Yeah,
I believe him. Like even his base, like he was lifting him up, and he was trying to push. Like I know when I play basketball with people, and people are so less stronger than me, and I use my leverage and legs and stuff. You know how people legs be coming up and be kind of like jumping a little bit.
Yeah,
like it was. It's very discouraging to fight a fighter that's faster than you, that's stronger than you, and has more IQ in terms of X's and O's. That's that is a recipe to where you essentially can't do what you've always done, and you essentially just got to fight this motherfucker. And I can't say. I mean, Errol Spence tried it in the sense, but he was still probably a bit too.
He was way too slow for me.
Yeah, he was too slow. But I'm saying he should have made it to more of a slugfest. But even when he was on the inside, like he's so robotic on the inside that he couldn't punch from different positions. You know how some people in the Mexican style, they get on the inside, and then you know how they put their foot in the tire and they just practice, throwing shots from any kind of way, overhand, and just anything, any position that you in. He should have been at that point. You got to get in his chest and just throw as many punches as you can, if it's obviously going to end how it ended. The second thing that I was going to say was, what was I going to say? It was about Terence Crawford. That you said he's strong. I agree, and I'll think of it. I'll let you go.
All right, gotcha. Now, bringing in another guest here, has been part of this show. I think he has. I don't know if he's going to have something to say here before he goes into this particular topic. But we're jumping in on here, Brother Joe from War Week. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, brother? I tell you what, I owe a sincere apology publicly to the Boxing Academic. And last time I came on this show with Boxing Academic, I was going through some stuff with my girl. Her father just passed away. And I had a terrible week. And that was no reason to take it out on the Boxing Academic. And I did that, and my apologies, brother. And I hope you accept my sincere apology, sir.
Yeah, man. No hard feelings. We all, go through it. It's no hard feelings. Like I said before, I respect what you do, man. And, I think you have a valuable opinion, and, I think I have a valuable opinion too, but definitely no hard feelings, man. And, I like talking boxing.
Thank you for being so gracious about it. And I really appreciate it, brother. Thank you. But I will say this, guys. Last night's event, and I was at the Dave & Buster's at the 410 and I-10 interchange in San Antonio, Texas. A lot of my fighters were there, and Yeah, I was. It was funny. The co-main eventer just ended, and I said, "Look, um, Pitbull Cruz, he may have just fought his way, or didn't fight his way. Actually fought his way out of a rematch with Tank Davis." I said, "Guys,
Yes.
at this level, it's
Yes.
not enough to win. You've
Yes.
got to sizzle. You've got to
Yes.
make a statement. You've got to have people talking about you after the event's finished. It's a business. It's in any other sport, it's enough just to get the W. In this business, you have to sizzle. It's not enough to look good, or not enough just to win. You've got to make a statement on this platform. And I tell you what, the very next fight, the main event, we saw something historic. No, I'm not talking about some undisputed bullshit. I'm talking about that was an all-time great performance, possibly one of the greatest performances you will ever see at this level. And it was awe-inspiring. And, you know, it was almost like that scene in Rocky IV, because in San Antonio, Texas, the great majority of everyone, they were rooting for Errol Spence. You remember at the end of Rocky IV where everyone started cheering for Rocky?
Yeah.
That's how it was at the Dave & Buster's in San Antonio. Now, I wish I could say I had something to do with that, saying, guys, this is special. No one's ever done this to Errol Spence Jr. And I know, once again, going into this fight, the ambidextrous switch-hitting master in Terence Crawford had several advantages stylistically. But Qingao, brother, he had all the variables last night. And I said, guys, you're seeing something special. This looked like Mayweather-Gatti at the elite level. Keep in mind,
Mayweather Corrales.
Keep in mind, he wasn't fighting. You know, you're a C-level fighter. He wasn't fighting a C-level fighter. He was fighting another pound-for-pound badass, undefeated, former Olympian in Errol Spence Jr., and he picked him apart, and you saw it happen as early as the end of round number 2, in which that right hand, he took away the beautiful, customarily problematic Spence lead hand. And he did it by winning the jab contest, finishing every single sentence that he ever had. Now, the reason why I'm referring to it as finishing your sentence, because that's how Emmanuel Stewart taught me. He goes, you know, Joseph, he's got to win the jab contest. And I said, well, how do you do that, Emmanuel? And he goes, well, let me put it in terms that you can understand. You know how you like to you like to talk over everyone and you like to finish everyone's sentence? I'm like, I don't do that. Yes, you do, motherfucker. Now shut up and listen. And he goes, now what it is as soon as that guy starts talking, pretend he's using the jab, you have to answer and finish his sentence to discourage him from using the jab. That's how you win the jab contest. And you've got 2 ways of doing it primarily. You either win the jab contest by establishing your own jab and finishing his sentence, or you use lateral movement. I thought Terence Crawford was going to try to use the latter. I thought it'd be foolish to try and sit with him and win the jab contest, the jousting tournament, so to speak, in the pocket. And that's exactly what he did. And after that, he took, I mean, once again, you look at a guy like Errol Spence, everything is off the jab. That's how he moves himself into position. That's how he keeps himself from taking, serious and heavy incoming as he's trying to close the distance, fight in the pocket. And yeah, Terence took it away as early as round 2. And we saw it 3, 4. And then in the immortal words of Joe Goosen, in Chico Corrales' corner, well, you got to get inside on him now. All right. Well, it got to that point in round number 6.
Yeah.
And what happened? Terence Crawford, his ability, he once again, his timing was immaculate. And he was the better man on the inside, punching in between all of Errol Spence's punches. And it was all over after that. Honestly, you could have thrown in the towel. Credit to him for continuing, but all Derek James did after round 6 in not throwing in the towel or asking Errol, look, it's not your night. You're going to get hurt. All he did was just prolong the ass whooping. As soon as you saw Errol Spence doubt himself in fighting on the inside and he started to retreat, it was over. And it was a masterful performance. He couldn't do anything against and once again, you brought up a good point. And we kind of figured that might be the case because of Terence Crawford's wrestling background.
Yeah.
He would be a stronger man. I just had no idea he would be throwing the more precise combinations on the inside and beating Errol to the punch there. It was shocking, but it was glorious. We saw, guys, an all-time great performance. Now, the only question is where you rank him all-time among welterweights in the modern era. Now, also, I don't want to hear any of this shit. Now, I once again, in the post-fight press conference, we heard Errol Spence Jr. say, yeah, that was my last fight at 147. I'd like to fight the rematch at 54. Bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit. All the extra weight is going to do is prolong that ass whooping. That's it. And in my opinion, he needs to let this one go if he wants to continue with his career. I understand that you're talking about a $10 million payday. Hey, man, fight for the vacant title when Terence Crawford, well, you know what? Once again, geez.
He's not going to,
that's a career.
Both of them are going up to 154.
Yeah, that was a career debilitating ass whooping at 54. He needs to let this go. And guys, there's no need for a rematch. Last night's fight, correct me if I'm wrong, James or BA. Last night's fight made Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 2 look competitive.
Well, yeah. Well, at least with that, I mean, you had something where, Wilder had some type of thing that he was able to do on that. But yeah, here in this one, and I said this earlier before you got on, Joe, it's the style matchups that just don't work for Errol Spence in this particular case with Terence Crawford. And there are two things with it, two dimensions. One, I said that, with Errol Spence, with him being at 147 for the majority of his career and him facing multiple guys that are around there at 147, they have a certain way of where they walk around at a certain weight. And you know this, they walk around at a certain weight and they cut down to 147, right?
Yeah.
So they have a certain type of frame, a certain type of, dimension, and they have and a number of them do have a certain type of a style to where a lot of the times what Errol Spence is able to do against his opponents is because he's facing guys that, came up from around the same size and had that type of mobility. Terence Crawford is coming from below where he had to use that mobility a lot at 135 and 140, and he's able to keep that at 147 because he's already walking around like around a solid 150, 152 maybe. So he really don't have to cut down that much. All he has to do is just do the weight cut along the way, and then just be able to just work on his craft for the majority of camp. He really doesn't have to worry about that. So if he has all of that mobility where he has the foot placement, the footwork, and he's able to be more fluent, and he was much more fluent in this particular fight here against Errol Spence.
That's an understatement, James.
And that's the thing. It's like when Boxing Academic mentioned this here, and I kind of talked about this, and I talked about it last week with Terence Crawford, is his strength comes from the legs and waist up. And so a lot of times, and I had seen it firsthand being live there for the Crawford-Porter fight, was that with Porter's style, he wants to rough up his opponents. He wants to get in close. He wants to tie his opponents up, make sure
but didn't allow it.
Be able to, throw anything. And Terence Crawford just used his lower body strength, lower legs, and in one round, he was able to go from his legs, go down from his knees, come up and put, Sean Porter off of his feet, right?
Yep.
So with
he discouraged Porter to the point where he didn't want to even try fighting him in the pocket. He tried to box him in the last part of the fight from mid to long range. Checkmate.
So So here with Errol Spence is like, yeah, you could do, what you're used to doing is that 1-1-2, 1-1-2, and then try to get in and then try to work the body. But with someone with Terence Crawford's dimensions, with him having a 74-inch reach, this is almost like how Floyd Mayweather was there at 147. Even though he was coming up just like Terence Crawford is now, he still had that long reach that was like unique for a fighter that was around that weight class. So with Mayweather, he was able to get away with that a lot, there at 147, but he just didn't have the power like Terence Crawford has. So a number of times there with Terence Crawford, especially when it was in range, you've seen, as I mentioned earlier, like you'll have Spence throwing the right jab, and it'll seem like he's out of range. But then Terence Crawford will come back and he'll throw a jab or he'll throw a punch that'll be fully extended and still land and have a little bit oomph behind it that'll snap Errol Spence's head back.
Yeah,
so when you had that, it was just
compact. Beautiful.
Yeah, just there, and that was it. It was like a power snap jab.
The step back left hand counter was working. The check right hook was working beautifully. I mean, everything was working.
Available the whole night.
Let me tell you,
the short, compact, crisp shots of Terence Crawford and the timing. There was not a damn thing he could do about it after as early as round 2. And it was a joy to watch. It was a joy to watch something that masterful.
And the thing too is, right, like one of the guys that I talked with a lot in reference to the sport, like he talked about Errol Spence's resistance and everything like that, but still, like there's a certain level of things that you could do in order to like have that punch resistance. Here, he was just shell shocked every time that he got hit with a counter by Terence Crawford, and it just stopped him in his tracks to where he didn't really have the ability to come back from it. And before the fight, I was saying that what Spence could do is he would have to be the guy to lead the dance, basically, and where if you're going to throw the right jab and then Crawford's going to throw the right jab, you're going to have to throw something back. So it's going to be jab, 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 or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. He really couldn't even do that after round 2. He couldn't do that.
He couldn't.
He couldn't.
It was a horror show for Team Spence, and there wasn't a damn thing they could do about it. And once again, the biggest, like the most.
Hey, Joe.
I go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Now, the other thing, too, what I was saying with that was that I wanted to see, Spence throw more combinations where it be at least a little bit more fluent with the right jab and then coming through with the left, right? But the issue for me was, and I've seen this the entire fight, with his strong hand, his left hand, he never really had it up to even his chin. So every time you've seen it where you could have Terence Crawford throw the right hook counter the whole time and it would land flush on Errol Spence. It wouldn't have mattered when he threw it, he would have landed on it because, like, with Errol Spence, he just had that left hand low. And I was like, wait a minute, I've never really seen him go at a fighter with his left hand low like that, or with him not having his high guard, because usually he'll come up with his high guard and then throw those jabs coming off that high guard, so where he has that left hand is still up high, so if anything comes back to it, he'll still be able to catch it. But he just didn't have that here in this particular fight, and that just just was a recipe for disaster.
You know what it looked like? It looked like to me, and you raised a really good point, and I really like the term you used, shell shocked. He looked like one of those NFL football games in which it's a playoff game, right? Like, you remember the old 95, I think it was 94, maybe the 94 championship game between the Steve Young 49ers and the Aikman Cowboys, in which Aikman threw, 4 interceptions that game, and the 49ers quickly went up 21-0. That's what it looked like to me. And they were shell-shocked. They didn't have the poise that Aikman and company had. Spence did last night. He didn't have it. And he was in quicksand. And he was drowning very, very quickly. And he didn't have the poise, didn't stay relaxed. He looked like he panicked in the corner. And dare I say, for the very first time, Derek James had no idea what to tell him.
I agree with that.
Isn't that the first time that you've ever heard Derek James panic in the corner and not give great ring in between round advice?
Yeah,
I had never seen that before, and they panicked, and they were in quicksand, and boy, they drowned by round 6.
So I got two things. JR, you are so right in his hand not being high enough. And one of the reasons, obviously, Terence Crawford's jab was going to get there. We all know that. But the reason why his head kept getting snapped back so much is because his hands were so low. If his hands might have been up just a tad bit higher, you know, Crawford's punch wouldn't have just so easily went over his jab. It would have at least been a tad bit more difficult for for Crawford's jab to go over his jab. Based upon Joseph's talk and your talk, I got a great theme for this fight. Take everything and give them nothing was the theme of this fight.
Yep. That's it. That's it. Honestly, it was a horror show. And Crawford was relentless, justifiably so. Relentless.
I mean, well, it was kind of like a control type of relentless thing. And this was kind of mentioned, you know, before you got on, Joe. We had Zoe on here. And it kind of like goes into, you know, them having a relationship with each other because they are friends. That's just the thing. They are friends. So it's like Crawford's aggression was like a controlled aggression. It was like he already knew what he could do against Errol Spence. It was just a matter of, you know, when he would be able to pull off that type of stuff. You know what I mean?
Even in that round, I'm sorry, Jay, even in that round when he knocked him down a few times, he tried to pat him on the back and be like, it's good. I agree with you. He definitely had a certain level of camaraderie toward him, even in knowing he was beating his ass.
Yeah. You know, and that was the thing, is like every time especially in that 7th round where he scored the 2 knockdowns, it was just like I was saying earlier, he was just straight, like Spence was just straight up shell shocked. It was like every time he got hit, it was like you know, like people brought up the whole thing with the Ugas fight with Spence, where he lost his mouthpiece and he kind of like paused there a little bit, you know. And the thing about it was just like every time he was getting hit, it was just having that type of mentality, like boom, like oof, this what, you know, happens and everything like that. So, you know, that was my one element there. And the other element was, I just felt like from what he had did in the past as far as like his defensive stance and posturing, he just didn't do that in this fight. So he was just getting touched up, lit up, and everything like that. And it was just a completely bad style. And like you were saying, Joe, whether it's at 147 or 154, it's just that style is just not good there.
Yeah, look, all the weight does, the extra weight, all it does is prolong the ass whooping for Errol Spence Jr. Does anyone really need to see that at this point? Spence is a great fighter. Does anyone really want to see himself subject him? Does anyone see him subject himself to that kind of punishment again?
Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman.
No. Honestly, brother. Honestly, I would love to see him fight for the soon-to-be. Well, no. Once again, he has to go up to 54. Honestly, I would love to see him prove his mettle against Tim Tszyu in Australia. That would be a war, and that would be a great fight, and that's a very winnable fight for Errol Spence.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, he doesn't need to go back and delve into those waters once again.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And once again, I'm not trying to be cute with the whole fish analogy. That's already been played out. But you almost got the sense, and a lot of people were buzzing about it last night before the event. And once again, I'm a journalist, so I like to look at all the other variables as you do, James.
Mm-hmm.
Bud Crawford's election. Now, once again, he won that horrific coin flip by Mike Tyson, right? His election to come out last and to be announced first. When you saw Eminem introduce him as the new undisputed or the next undisputed welterweight champion, Terence Bud effing Crawford. When you saw that and it created that buzz, you kind of had the feeling, wow, this is going to be a special night for Terence Crawford, especially with him walking out with the fishnet. It almost gave you that sense. But nothing could prepare you. Nothing could prepare anyone for what they were about to see. We saw an all-time great performance, guys. And once again, take nothing away. I'm hearing a ton of shit. Oh, he was weight drained. You know what? There are no excuses when you sign on that dotted line. There are none.
That's the fight that he wanted. He wanted that fight. He did everything that he could in order to make that fight because he wanted to fight for the undisputed welterweight championship, and that is what he did. You know, regardless of any type of circumstance. And he said it himself. He's like, "No, I'm not putting up no excuses. It just wasn't my night. It was Terence Crawford's night." So, and that's that. Now, as far as like, you know, what could be out there, you know, for both fighters, you know, I kind of feel you on the thing with the Tim Tszyu joint, because for Tim Tszyu, that might be the biggest fight that he could make at this particular point at 154 pounds. I mean, if you're gonna have Mel Charlo move up, you know, and fight Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan on September 30th, then it would be like, if anything, regardless of what happens on September 30th, it would be a good little while before Jermell Charlo even thinks about, you know, going back down to 154 pounds. That's not going to be until like February or March of next year. So you can't just sit around and wait on that. You know what I'm saying? So why not go ahead and try to see if you can make one of those big fights there with Errol Spence? Now,
that's right. But after that ass whooping, though, James.
Yeah, that's the thing with Errol Spence.
How long would you advise him to sit out? Because once again, don't exercise your right for an immediate rematch. You need to let your body heal. You don't need to be in the ring for the rest of the year.
That's the thing. And the thing too is, like, with fighters of that caliber, you know, we see this with a number of these fighters, whether it's because of the money or because of, you know, their status or anything like that, they don't really get back in the ring, you know, that often anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, are you going to come back like next year, sometime early next year, like January, February or something like that? Who knows? But, you know, that just it's like two things with what happened there with Errol Spence, right? It's not like he, you know, just got like knocked clean out. No,
that would have been better.
Yeah,
it would have been better.
He got picked apart and destroyed mentally and physically.
Well, physically, definitely physically. Mentally, I'm not sure, because for me, I think that Errol Spence, like him as a competitor, he just, you know, like I said, he tried to make the effort as much as he possibly could up until that point. Like every time he
you know, that's a very good point. He was still fighting, and he was still landing some good shots. Like even the final night, even the knockdown in the final round of action. He landed a great overhand left, and it was countered beautifully with that right hand uppercut from Bud Crawford. Put his ass on the canvas, and he kind of smiled and looked like, what the hell just happened?
My fear. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you talking. I thought you were done.
No. Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
My fear with Errol at this point is at the elite level. The blueprint is out to beat Errol. That's my fear for him.
No. Let me tell you, academic. Look, you have to consider the toolbox and the ring IQ of Terence Crawford.
Right.
Who else can do that besides Jaron Boots Ennis, possibly?
Well, I'm saying when I say the blueprint, the blueprint, what I'm saying to have maximum success against Errol Spence, when Errol Spence get on that front foot, you just start throwing punches at him, and he effectively don't know what to do. And you have that's how Ugas had success, when he did land punches on him. That's I think the blueprint is out. Like if you can punch at Errol while he's on his front foot, when
Ugas had to look, I guarantee you, Ugas under the tutelage of a great fight trainer and a great strategist, like Ismail Salas, I guarantee you they had the exact same fight plan as Terence Crawford and Bomac. But there's a big difference. One guy is able to execute that against an excellent elite level talent like Errol Spence Jr., and the other one doesn't. There's no one else besides possibly Jaron Boots Ennis that can execute that kind of strategy. Amanis Stanionis can't. Nope. Not Virgil Ortiz.
Nope.
I don't see anyone else. Now, once again, take no credit away from Terence Crawford. Easier said than done. No one's been able to do it up to this point.
Yep.
And everyone has access to the same fight film.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knew that going into that fight.
Well, you know it more clearly now.
Going into Errol Spence Jr.
You know it more clearly now. I think even Keith Thurman can take advantage of that at this point.
At his age, shit. I will say this, though. Errol Spence Jr. or Keith Thurman, I don't think he's ever gotten credit for being the complete fighter that he is. This is a guy who can box you at multiple ranges as well, but he doesn't have the ambidextrous gifts of Terence Crawford. And that was a huge detriment to Errol Spence Jr. He was getting hit by multiple angles. To him, it probably looked like there were two of Terence Crawford in there with him.
We mentioned the name. It looks like the one-time crew is coming through on this, man. He said, shout out to Tim Bayless. He said, Kiko do Bud so dirty. I'm like, hey, man, let me tell you something, all right? This kind of goes back to my point when it comes to the thing with welterweights, right? Welterweights are, and I've kind of like heard this too. Welterweights are basically middleweights and super welterweights that cut down to 147 because of the money and the prestige of the welterweight.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now with Keith Thurman, right? Okay, he does have, a few dimensions here and there. He can move this, he can move that, but he still, to me, has that type of a frame of a welterweight in where he can move, but not like move very well in a place where he could pop in and pop out and that type of things too, right?
No. He can. Obviously, he's shown that, and I remember interviewing him. And this was right when he was coming up. He had just become WBA champion, and he was known for knocking everyone out very quickly.
Yeah.
He was known for that one time, right, power.
Yeah.
And then he fought Diego Chavez from Argentina, and then he showed his ability to move in and out of the pocket like a needle. And he just did a brilliant job of picking apart the very hard punching Diego Chavez. For the first time in his career, he wasn't the harder puncher in the pocket. And he had to use his ring IQ. He had to use his athleticism. He had to use his boxing ability. And it was all on display in that fight. And I interviewed him after that. And I said, are we just scratching the surface at the real Keith one-time Thurman? He goes, oh, you hit the nail right on the head. I only showed y'all guys 70%. And you're going to see it coming up. The more I fight, and I want Floyd Mayweather Jr., and I'm not joking about that. I want Manny Pacquiao. Obviously, he never got those fights. But that version of Keith Thurman, I don't know if he exists any longer. Once again, he looked great against Mario Barrios, but that was Mario Barrios.
Right.
This is a part-time fighter now. Guys, make no mistake about it. Everything that Keith Thurman has accomplished in boxing Well, anything that Keith Thurman was going to accomplish within the sport of boxing, he's already done it, guys. Because at this point in his career, he's a product of inflated purses, and this is why he's become a part-time fighter. He wants too much money for what he's worth. This is why most people within the business are referring to him as Keith Once Upon a Time Thurman. Because he is a part-time fighter, and he prices himself out of every major fight. He wanted $10 million to fight Errol Spence Jr. at one time.
Yep.
And he also wanted $10 million to fight Terence Crawford. He's not going to get it. He's not worth that much money.
Well, yeah, and the thing about it is, I know that he was on the thing there on Twitter Spaces with Lazy Lefty, and he was talking about different things that could potentially happen for him. But the thing about it is like he has to get in the ring and fight. It's one thing to kind of either dismiss a certain fighter, and we know who that particular fighter is, but you still have to get in the ring. And the thing about it is that like he's accomplished a lot, but we don't know where he is at right now, and we have to see where he is at right now, regardless of who his opponent's going to be. Now, I want to add in another guest here. There's just shade over an hour into this stream. Brother Terrell here in the building. Oh my God! What did he do? Oh Lord!
Holy shnikes!
Oh man! Yo, what's up, Terrell?
That actually would be a good idea for him to start something like that, like Bud Crawford fish fry or something.
He probably will do that.
Hey, just saying what's up to everybody. Maximum respect to each and everybody on the show. Just one quick thought. If you think about it, this is one of the most important podcasts in the boxing source history in terms of talking about a generational fight, generational talent, and the lead up to the fight and post-fight, things like that. So it's a very important podcast, and certainly glad to be here to talk boxing with all you guys. Definitely.
Yeah, thanks. No doubt with that, man.
Pleasure's ours, Terrell. Thank you, Chef.
Well, like I said, man, yeah, I could have been out there, but man, listen, I said ain't no way I'm going out there in the 115-degree weather, man.
James, hold on. Let me just, if I can, let me dispel this reality, right, in this myth. Can you pull up Tip Bayless's final? He's talking about when I said that. Yeah, he requested $10 million to fight Terence Crawford. That was real. That was real. Okay, and once again, I got that confirmed from Bruce Trampler. That was real. Okay, they sent over a fax or an email, scan, whatever, and it was an offer to fight Terence Crawford, and Keith Thurman was demanding $10 million. They didn't even respond because it was absurd. Keith Thurman, his market value is not even close to something like that.
Yeah.
That was real.
Yeah. All right. So we're going back to, oh my God. I just got thrown off by something. Okay. So yeah, going back to, the thing here with, like I said, with Terence Crawford, a number of people have said or posted up like potential matchups for him. And I kind of like mentioned it, what's out there, 154 or even 147. The thing about it with 147 is you have Jerome Butsinis. I know that who is it? Ian Monestani on this like raised his hand saying that he's the one that's supposed to be first in line. But like I said, like I would rather just have those two guys go at it and just see what happens with Terence Crawford as far as like what could be out there in 154. He could try to go after that an interim belt or fight a couple of other guys there at 154 pounds. It just depends on how long is he going to sit out here before his next fight takes place. You know what I mean? So there's that. And for Errol Spence, as we discussed earlier, man, like this one was like a really, really debilitating loss here for him. I know that, he feels like as the competitor he is, he's like, like Terence Crawford was the better man tonight. I just didn't
that was pride talking, brother. Cooler heads will prevail when he
you know,
sees that fight again.
You gotta look at it and say, hey, like my style is just not it for someone like Terence Crawford, and just go a different direction, because he he just really doesn't have the style to really make Terence Crawford have many problems, even if he had those type of things where, like I said, from a defensive standpoint, having his hands up and trying to move in and things like that. He just doesn't have that type of a movement to where he could, really clamp down or try to corner or try to cut off the ring with Terence Crawford to where he could, do his most damage. So he likely would have to move a different direction and just have a few fights there at 154, and just depending on what happens on September 30th, hang around there at 154. It's not like, he can't, have a shot against those guys there at 154 pounds. I mean, like I said, those are guys that are around his same size. So I don't see where he won't have much of an issue, having potential matchups against those guys at the top of the 154-pound division currently, outside of, Jermell Charlo, of course.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to hear any more noise about, he was weight trained. Look, he got 36 hours to try and rehydrate with IVs and everything. Okay? He came into the ring weighing, he was a super middleweight last night, and he still got his ass picked apart to the bone. Okay? That had nothing to do with him being weight trained. That was everything. That was everything about Terence Crawford just being a switch-hitting badass who could fight you from either angle. And he showed it. It was all on display. It almost reminded me of the Dallas Cowboys against the Buffalo Bills 92 Super Bowl, in which, that's an elite level team, but you're facing with, and once again, Jimmy Johnson, the way he described it, I just had the better hand, and I laid it all out during that game. I had the straight flush, and there's not a damn thing they could do to counter that. That's what we saw last night, guys. Don't take anything away from Terence Crawford, and definitely don't take anything away from Errol Spence Jr. He is a great fighter. And anyone else at 47, he would have whooped their ass minus Duran Boots Ennis. And he's done that. He virtually cleaned out the division with the exception of Terence Crawford. So I don't care what anyone says. He signed on that dotted line. He had 36 hours to rehydrate. He came into the ring weighing 167. No excuses.
And then
he got beaten and picked apart by the better man.
And even on top of that, as we saw in the All Access show, he had a private chef to properly
dietitian,
diet him and things like that. Put him on the right diet. Because as he said before, before he was doing it by himself. Like I said, this time he had a private chef to properly get the good nutrients and proteins needed to properly drain down and things like that, and still be healthy and strong. So I totally agree with that. We don't want to hear that, he's drained and things like that. No, like I said, he signed a contract, and he admitted that. He definitely admitted that himself. But at the same time, he kind of gave himself an out, next fight at 154. What are you trying to say right there? You kind of contradict yourself in that regard. You signed a contract.
That was pride.
Yeah.
That was all pride. And let me tell you, don't be shocked, guys, if he changes his story by the end of next week. Don't be shocked if he changes his story by the end of next week and cooler heads prevail. Once again, understandably so, he was emotional and he was embarrassed. And that was the competitor and the prideful Errol Spence Jr. Think about this. Throughout his entire amateur and pro career, no one had ever even resembled doing that to Errol Spence Jr. And that was his pride talking. I will be shocked if he actually wants to exercise his right to rematch. But once again, we've seen stranger things. We just saw it with Joe Joyce turning down over $1 million to exercise the right for another ass whooping by Zhilei Zhang. So who knows?
I mean, yeah, anything could be possible there in this instance, especially when you talk about the amount of money that could come from this particular fight. going to into that there real quick, and I'll briefly close
Can
this.
we, after you finish with this, James, can we talk about the business and ESPN really
Oh,
dropping the ball?
You really want me to get into that? All right.
Brother,
So,
I'm ready. I've got both guns in my holsters, brother, and I'm ready to go, man. Because I got a lot of information on this, brother. Go ahead.
That could be some really spicy stuff. All right, so now back into the business of this thing here. Like I'm saying, I mean, we kind of talked about this, leading into the fight. Me and Joseph had talked about it. We kind of hoped that it would be a very successful event here. I know that we were talking about. Maybe Joseph here and talked about it could potentially be like something like a Errol Spence versus Mike Garcia that was around 375,000 buys. But I'd said what, from what I was seeing up in the weeks leading into it, I was thinking that it was going to be above that, like it could be around like around the 8,000 or something like that. But then once it started going days and days before, and especially when I saw what I saw on Tuesday and Wednesday there in Las Vegas, the amount of people that were right there, I was like, oh no, this is going to be really, really, really successful. It was going to be around that Tank versus Ryan level of pay-per-view buys, but with the amount of what was at stake in this fight, it was going to raise it up. So I say, you know what? Let's get that thing in around 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. So I'm thinking that it could be around that range, because I'm like, even from like Friday, Saturday, and even today, like I've had people talk with me. You've seen it on my on my personal Facebook page. When I posted about the fight, you've seen people respond to it and talk about it. I've got phone calls about it. I've got text messages about it and all that type of stuff all across the board. I've never seen this many people really talk about a fight like this in years. And this includes the stuff with Wilder versus Fury that went down. This includes the stuff that went down with Tank versus Ryan. So, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing how much they got off this, because I'm feeling that this was a very successful event all across the board.
And we'll find out this week, brother.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out this week, just a phone call away.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and guys, I will find out either tomorrow or Tuesday how well this did and what the projections are. But I will say this though, no thanks to the sports leader in the American market, ESPN. No, let me give you some insight on this, guys. Once again, Mike Coppinger, his credential. Well, his credential was revoked. Well, why? Well, look at the coverage, the shitty coverage you're giving. And once again, it was in direct conflict of interest with the UFC card. Keep in mind, guys, ESPN, they're in the UFC business. That pay-per-view last night, that bullshit circus event, okay? That was offered on ESPN Plus exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the coverage, the day of this historic undertaking, the only undisputed welterweight matchup in the four-belt era.
Mm-hmm.
And these two gentlemen had the best combined undefeated record of any welterweight unification in boxing's rich history. 67-0. And guess what? You saw that big UFC banner on their website.
Uh-huh.
And what did you see about Crawford? You saw Aikman talking about Aaron Rodgers making his debut for the Jets. Then you saw the Dodgers and the Reds.
Uh-huh.
Then you saw the Braves and the Brewers.
Uh-huh.
Then you saw something about soccer. Then you saw something about UFC. And then at the very bottom, you saw something about Crawford Spence. That's why Mike Coppinger had his, and let me give you some insight in how this media business works now. This is why I left AM radio. I was doing the Sports Zone on San Antonio 760 every weekend. And I was doing promotions and publicist work for Leha Bata Promotions at the time. This is like 12, 13 years ago. And I wanted to get Jesse James Leha on the show and give away some tickets and talk about our upcoming promotion. Well, the GM at the ticket, WOEI, 760. He said, well, have they purchased an advertising block with us? And I said, no, they haven't. Well, then you can't give away tickets. You can't really promote this local event. We need them to advertise with us first. And I'm like, are you shitting me? This is a huge event with the former super featherweight champ. Okay, he's going to be on the air. You're going to get a lot of live listens, and we can't give away tickets to the event? No, that's our policy unless they advertise with us. And guys, that's why they gave them limited coverage, because Showtime Sports refused to advertise with ESPN. And that's why they didn't give this historic undertaking. They gave it shit coverage.
Mm.
And that's why Mike Coppinger's credential was revoked. They said, you know what? You can do your job just fine, just not on our dime. Right. Okay? Do your job, and maybe we'll consider you for the next one.
Maybe, because they had him on for the thing for Tank Ryan. But for this particular one, no. And this kind of like goes to me for ESPN, and this kind of like was one of the gripes from like a number of people. And it wasn't the whole thing with the Mike Coppinger stuff. It was just because it was just ESPN, right? Now, I think they did maybe have like ESPN Knockout or something like that. That was, like the Spanish version of whatnot. But ESPN itself, right? You're a sports network. So you're supposed to be covering everything, like all sports, everything, right? So for me, looking at them on the social media, on the Twitter or on the Instagram or whatever it is, you kind of like, hinted at what they were doing, right? Like around that day, the day or the day before, they were posting stuff about NFL news. They were posting stuff about the NBA. They were posting, highlights of Aaron Judge hitting a home run or something, right? And I said, shoot, they could retweet highlights of lacrosse. They retweeted highlights of lacrosse, but you mean to tell me that they didn't have anything on the biggest fight of the year in the sport of boxing?
Because because Steven didn't want to advertise with ESPN. He did not want to give them money. And that's how they treated this event. Well, you know what? You don't want to advertise with us? Well, then we're not going to give you prime coverage for this historic event.
So, Joseph, based on what you're saying, who would be in the fault in that, though?
Who would be in the fault of that? ESPN. They need to do their fucking job. Are they not a periodical any further? That's like any major newspaper, the Washington Post, not reporting on some great piece of legislation, important piece of legislation being passed because someone doesn't want to advertise with them. That's absurd, guys. Now, once again, this is a sad day in journalism.
Yeah.
And it just proves my point that journalism in America has been dead for decades now. And it's become a racket. And unless you play the payola game, you're not going to get prime coverage with the sports leader in the American market. And it's dog shit.
Yeah. And especially with like sports like boxing like that, because every other thing with the major sports, you don't really have to worry about that because they're going to get, what they need back off that. So they could post what they want about NFL. They could post what they want about Major League Baseball and NBA or anything like that. But like with stuff like, like I said, with boxing or like, how you going to put in like lacrosse? Like, come on, son. Like, what are we doing?
Look. With any of these other major sports leagues, they've got the sponsorship that comes with it.
Yeah.
Right? Boxing doesn't have that luxury nowadays. Okay? And once again, this is something that I do for the local promoters and local fighters. I will put together packages and solicit and get sponsorships from local and regional businesses to be a part of these events. It takes that much effort. And guys, I do ring announcing and commentary, but the great majority of what I do is I get sponsorship for these regional and local promoters. And that's what kind of effort it takes.
And that's what drives those local events, man. Like I mean, you have that type of support from sponsors, man. That handles a lot when it comes to putting events like that up.
So before any event, you want to cover as much cost as you possibly can before that live gate even opens.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, and that's the key to making money in this industry. And most fans don't understand that part of it. And I'm telling you right now, this just exposes the fraudulent media extortionary practices that ESPN, they've become the Gestapo of sports media in America, and it's dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm ready to boycott, man, anything ESPN and Disney from this point forward. They can kiss my ass.
Oh, man, you know what, though?
Oh, the next Marvel movie?
Oh, I couldn't care less. I stopped watching that horse shit as soon as they killed off Captain America and Iron Man.
Hey, man, that kind of hurts me, man, because I got to go through at least 3 more weeks of ESPN Plus because I had to get it just so I could watch it.
Dude, they talked about Sinise Estrada as much or if not more than they talked about Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr.
And that's not even with that actual.
Now, let me tell you how much more popular and how much more buzz there was surrounding this Crawford Spence event. At the event I staged last night, right, to promote our upcoming August 26th fight card. Mm-hmm. It was great. And the GM, Chris Armitage, thank you, brother. Great job last night. He goes, you know what? There is no crackle or sizzle surrounding this UFC event. So I'm going to turn that volume all the way down. And throughout the entire venue, we're going to crank up Showtime pay-per-view so everyone can hear and witness the real fight, the one of consequence, the one that actually matters. And that's what we heard all night last night. And even after the UFC main event hadn't even started yet when Spence Crawford ended.
Right.
And everyone, no one was paying attention to that UFC event, and everyone was still buzzing about the amazing performance that we had witnessed. That once in a lifetime, once in a generational talent, Terence Crawford. It was, everyone was buzzing about it still. So right now, the boxing world, boy, that's Terence Crawford's oyster. And dude, who knows? I mean, so let me ask you this. This week, right? Mm-hmm. You know how you go and see great bands live? Like, say you go see the Eagles live, and we saw starting out this week, the Eagles coming out and playing The Long Run, right? Or one of their classics, Peaceful, Easy Feeling, whatever. And the boxing world saved the very best for last. Once again, they go off stage, you hear the fans cheering, and they come back for an encore. And what did we get last night? We got the Eagles playing Hotel California. And it just, once again, it was only fitting to a superb week of events in boxing. And I tell you what, right now, if you're Terence Crawford, do you just ride off into the sunset knowing that you are an all-time great?
Oh, no. That was another thing, too, about with Terence Crawford in the lead up to this particular fight is that, like, he realized, okay, this is what they do, this is what they're doing here, as far as like PBC and that type of stuff and whatever it is. So he was loving it. He was loving every bit of it. Like his man's Steven Nelson was talking about that. Like he definitely says like, hey, I'm with this. I'm PBC, or whatever it is for as long as I can possibly do it. So you will definitely see more of Terence Crawford, and you kind of like seeing that element of him in these various shows that were, leading up to it. So now you see the character of Terence Crawford, and you're going to see like how he's going to be viewed by the public, So I definitely, for Terence Crawford, he definitely has to, ride.
He became a mainstream star last night. And yes, he would be wise, dare I say, to move up, dare to be even greater and fight the winner of Canelo Alvarez, Jermell Charlo, at 168. Now, I'm going to ask you this, and the last thing I'm going to say about ESPN, brother, and once again, this is just once again, me just being a journalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they had this attitude regarding this event because they were bitter that they had invested so much money in Terence Crawford just to see him walk away and make the biggest fight of his career?
Oh, Top Rank?
ESPN. They're the ones who invested the money, not Top Rank, brother.
Yeah,
make no mistake about it.
Yeah, they did, because that still was part of their deal that happened a few years ago. Terence Crawford was definitely a part of that, and so now they see like, hey, you see Terence Crawford leaving, after that fight with Sean Porter and all that, and they're like, you mean to tell me that we could have had something that could have ended up being like, I would say it would be bigger than what they did with Wilder Fury 2 and Wilder Fury 3.
We can make money off of him.
Huh?
Yep.
We can actually make money off of him, not lose mentions and stuff.
Instead of losing money. Now, once again, they never turned a profit on Terence Crawford.
Right.
They never did. And
Never.
do you think maybe that's why they had this attitude towards this historic event the entire time?
Yeah, that is definitely possible, and I like that question. I like that question right there, because that's definitely key. And I'm saying someone in that ESPN office is really salty about what happened there. Really salty, because they had that opportunity to have this fight of this magnitude, and it was just dropped, fumbled and whatever and whatnot. So I mean, they're gonna be hurting for a few, because as of right now, with them being exclusive to Top Rank, like we don't really see like anything that they could possibly do as far as like big fights are concerned here for a good little while, because I think those possibilities, there's only one thing that they could do at this point, and that just depends on what, as we now call the quote unquote or soon to be former undisputed lightweight champion, what he's going to be doing here in the future. But that's a whole nother story here later. I wanted to just jump on what else happened there on the pay-per-view real quick. Just wanted to run through that.
Don't even bring up Nonito, brother. Oh, that hurt my heart.
I know.
Oh.
But one of the things that kind of hurt me though was the co-feature bout between Isaac Cruz Gonzalez and Giovanni Cabrera, right? Because
that rematch flushed down the toilet, brother.
Hey, listen, I watched that fight and I was like, oh my God, I got convinced, man. Some people convinced me, man. I rode the Cabrera train. I like pause.
Oh, Chingao, dude, that was miserable. That was miserable. Dude, who let that guy on a pay-per-view? Guy who didn't know how to fight. Yeah, he had an undefeated record. And what the hell was Freddie Roach doing with that guy?
Oh, my God.
They would have been better off putting some heavyweights in that spot.
Honestly, they would have been better off putting anyone else in that slot besides Cabrera. That guy doesn't know how to fight and was never interested in winning a round. And can you believe they let Feldman score that fight? He gave that fight to Cabrera. When are they going to put this old, decrepit piece of shit, when are they going to put him out to pasture? Quit letting him scoring fights.
You know what the worst part about that thing with Cabrera was? It wasn't that he was fighting with his hands down the entire fight, right? It was like the third or fourth round, and I have never in my life, I swear to God, I have never in my life seen anybody telegraph their strong hand like Giovanni Cabrera telegraphed his left hand by putting it up and putting his arm like pretty much away from his body and then throwing it. I was like, what is this?
He didn't know how to fight. And once again, his chin was up in the air. He stood up there like a totem pole. Did you see how wide his stance was?
Yes.
He didn't know how to fight. That's what made it so painful to watch.
Well, that was
that's what made it so to watch Pitbull Cruz and show this serious flaw in his game,
Yes.
not knowing how to cut off the damn ring.
Not knowing how to cut off the ring, not knowing how to work the body first to chop down a tree.
It was miserable.
And not wanting to jab. Wanting to jab.
Yep, he flushed his opportunity for a Tank Davis rematch down the toilet.
God,
let's go to plan B, guys.
What?
So,
yo, that almost had me though, because I had put listen, I fell for the trap. I put down a little on Giovanni Cabrera.
Oh, geez, that guy didn't know how to fight. I could have told you that, brother, before the fight.
I was like,
honestly, that was Tom Brown putting more faith in Isaac Cruz.
Isaac Cruz, that was.
Then he should have. Exactly so basically, what
Yep.
Tom Brown thought he was doing was putting a golf ball on a tee for Isaac Cruz. Hey, brother, this is your moment to shine. Go out and make a statement on this huge card and set the table for a rematch. He never did that. Never. And he hit him with some clean shots. But Qing Gao, you give that boy that much confidence going into the back half of the fight, you're not going to be able to knock him out with one punch.
Yep. And that's how Cabrera was able to get back in it in the 10th and 11th round, man. Like, you seen him, like he was still throwing. He was throwing combinations like he was doing in those first couple of rounds and that type of stuff. And he got back into it, and man,
and then Isaac Cruz's frustration, like an amateur, dude, pulling in a la Victor Ortiz, like jumping headbutt.
Yeah, that wasn't cool.
Shit.
Yeah, that was not cool.
Shit. Dude, honestly, I don't care if I ever see Isaac Cruz again after that. That was miserable. And that's, I told, he got the W. So fucking what? Pardon my French. So what? And I told my fighters there, I'm saying, look, guys, if you want to sell tickets, if you want to make some noise in your hamlet, getting the W is not enough. You've got to put forth a sensational, sizzling, eye-catching performance. If you want to, once again, one event leads to another. One event leads to another, and you've got to build that momentum by putting forth some sizzle. Now, keep in mind, mainstream and casual fight fans, they don't view the fights like Terrell, like Boxing Source, like Boxing Academic. They want to see some fight in their fight. And if this guy is just looking to survive, you need to make a statement, and you need to make an example out of that guy. Did we see anything reminiscent of that? No.
Nope. Definitely not. And that, just puts Cruz at a definite step back. And like you said, I mean, you really wouldn't want to see him out there in the ring again. I said this after the fight. I said, listen, don't put him anywhere near Tank. Don't even think about that. Like, you better off putting him in there against Frank Martin. Especially with what could potentially happen with the lightweight belts.
You want to know how bad that performance was, James? You want to know how bad that performance was?
All right.
Ryan Garcia immediately called him out on Twitter.
Yes, he did.
That's right. How bad that performance was.
Oh, he said.
Okay, so now Ryan is licking his chops at Rolly and Isaac Cruz. Holy shit! You just screwed the pooch when Ryan Garcia is calling your ass out.
Yep. That's the thing, man. That definitely is the thing, man. So, hey, that might be Isaac Cruz's best option, man. Like, if they could position something for him to, like, I mean, isn't Isaac Cruz with
he's with Manny Pacquiao. He's with Sean Gibbons.
Gibbons. Yeah. So I say, you know what? Go ahead and have him, go and fight Ryan Garcia, whether it's at the Zone or on Showtime or whatever it is. Like, go ahead and let Ryan Garcia handle that type of stuff, man. I know
that's miserable.
Right.
That is miserable.
So I'll skip the thing there with the Donaire Santiago thing.
Thank you, brother. And once again, I will just say this: that was physically painful to watch.
Yeah.
That was like staring at the sun, because I've been covering Nonito his entire career, and I sent them a text after the fight. I said, brother, exactly that. That was physically painful for me. That hurt my heart. brother, it's time.
Yeah.
And I said, I look forward to seeing you become an elite level trainer for decades to come, and look forward to seeing your continuing efforts as being one of the best ambassadors the sport has. But you can't do it in the ring. And once again, Sugar and I talked about that after the fight. And oh, Chingao, dude. I was like, Sugar, why weren't you? Because he was hanging out with Team Donaire, right, the entire weekend in Vegas. And I said, why weren't you chief second? He goes, well, they didn't let the commission know I couldn't be there in the corner with them as part of their team. So they were there with Rachel as chief second and Mike Basil, the cup man. And no one knew. No one, once again, you need that second pair of eyes. Someone should have told Nonito, look, you don't have the reflexes. You don't have the speed any longer. You have no choice. You cannot counter this guy because you won't be able to pull the trigger. You've got to throw with him. You're the slower-handed guy. You have to throw with him. As soon as you see that shoulder start to move, start throwing. You've got to throw with him. You're getting busted up anyway. You're going to have to take that risk and throw with him, a la Juan Manuel Marquez, Manny Pacquiao.
Yep.
And no one had the eyes to tell him that. And it was painful.
Yeah, just
oh my gosh, it was hard to watch, dude.
Yeah, you just couldn't pull the trigger, man. Especially in those last few rounds, he was getting tagged up with 4 and 5 punch combinations, and you just seen right there, like, that pretty much was it for Nonito Donaire. So Santiago, got that vacant WBC bantamweight title there, but he also had an opening bout. Yoenis Tellez,
guy, Yoenis Tellez.
Yeah, and man, I seen him out there in the camp there, a couple months ago or whatnot, and he really did his thing there against Sergio Garcia. They said he was ready for this particular fight, and he showed that here against Sergio Garcia, man. He just overwhelmed Sergio Garcia.
That overhand right was a thing of beauty in the third round.
Yep. And so, man, like he's definitely going to be jumping up there in that super welterweight division. And I mean, this has to, I don't have it on me here or see it on me here real quick. This might have him in some of them rankings there at 150, at 154. You know what I'm saying? Especially, like I said, with with him being the replacement guy on there, that's gonna put him in there to kind of like compete in that 154 rankings there with a number of those guys that are floating at the 10 to 15.
Well, hey James, so, I do have to get ready for Gogi's show, but I will say this: the last thing I'm going to say is congratulations on you, Inoue. You were the best pound for pound fighter for about 5 days.
Yep.
Until we saw what we saw last night.
Yep.
That was an awe-inspiring, crackling, sizzling, all-time great performance, and you can't take anything away from. I don't want to hear anything about weight train. I don't want to hear anything about rematch at 54. You give that man, that all-time great, his flowers. You give him his credit. Okay? Ellie Sekbeck, I hope you're listening. Quit being, what did he say? Call him a retarded ass dude?
Yeah, something like that.
Quit being a retarded ass dude and give this man his props. He's earned it. It's about time. And ESPN, quit being a bunch of bitter ass bitches. Okay, cover these fights. You're the sports leader of the American market. Cover these damn fights. Do your job. And that's it. Guys, it's been a pleasure. God bless all of you guys, and continue to talk boxing. Have a great show, man.
All right, gotcha. No doubt there, Joe. We'll see you out there with with Coach Gogi on his Warwick Radio channel. And back to what I was covering there with that card. Like I said, Yoenis Tellez was going to be there. In the rankings there at 154, pretty much like around those guys like the Terrell Garcias, the Xander Zayas, the Erickson Lubins, and he was a replacement for Jesus Ramos, who has been a quick or highly rising contender there in the 154-pound weight class. So we're definitely going to see Yoenis Tellez in a number of these other cards that Showtime is going to have here in the near future there. So you definitely have that. But that was the pay-per-view portion of what happened there on Showtime, and just culminated with Terence Crawford just having a dominant performance there against Errol Spence Jr. to become the undisputed welterweight champion, and he has been the 4 belt undisputed champion in the super lightweight and the welterweight division. So it's just as he says, it looks like it is the Terence Crawford era, man. Terrell, you just had got on here, for a little bit. Anything that you wanted to add to what happened in the fight card?
The main thing is for Spence. So once again, we always talk about what does your first loss do to you? Will you be the same fighter, or will you be the same fighter, or are you different now? This is definitely a debilitating loss that Spence endured. But at the same time, when we look at who else can do that to Spence, and arguably Boots, but even with Boots, sorry, bro, but you still got to wait in line. We want to see you in there with all the top guys and things like that, but you got to wait in line still. It's unfortunate, but that's the sport of boxing in that regard.
Yeah.
But just back to Spence, personally, I think he'd be the same fighter because, like I said, outside of Crawford, there's no one there that can do that to Spence that's out there right now.
Right.
With Danny Jonas or whoever you want to line up against him, things like that. So he's still going to be good, even if he goes up to 154. There's no one with the skill set of a Crawford. So Spence's style, the aggressive, comfort, southpaw style, can be effective against anybody at 154. Of course, that remains to be seen, and until we see who when he goes up and who he fights. But in theory, he could be just as effective with the same style at 154, or it'd be a Loop or Fundora or somebody like that. It really
right. Yeah, that's what I was about to name, Fundora.
But my question is, though, will Spence question himself from this point on when he get hit and stuff? Will he question himself similar to how Terence made him question himself in that fight? Will he be the same fighter, like mentally, in terms of I'm gonna break your wheel, type Rocky stuff, or will he question himself in every fight moving forward?
That's a great question, Mike, because the guy he got 3 knockdowns for the first time in his career, all in one fight. How debilitating is that? That's crushing. You can just see the look on his face, even at the first knockdown, like wow. The second knockdown, like wow, it happened again. I really might be in trouble in that regard. You can see the look on his face. He doesn't say a whole lot, but we can read between those lines, and you can just kind of delve into his emotions at the time of those knockdowns. Like wow, again, third knockdown. Even just going back to the second knockdown, his face was beat up. That right eye was really swollen up, and then at some point his whole face was kind of bloody, not a bloody mess, but just bloodied up and things like that. And we've never seen that with Spence before. We've never seen nobody do that before. So, like you said, Mike, just how mentally prepared will he be for his next fight? Does he really want to go back into a rematch with Crawford? If not, you definitely need to give him. I'm not saying a soft touch, even at 154 or something, or just something like that. Someone solid, but someone that can help him build his confidence back up. That in case if it is lost in that regard.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. I mean, there's I feel like there's still a number of guys that are out there at 154 where he could, properly be matched up and, he could like get back into it. But, it also goes back into like, okay, is he going to be, ready for something like that? Is he going to, be motivated to, get in the ring and face someone like that? Because it's like, it's almost like how it kind of like comes off of what we have for Wilder and Fury when Fury and eventually stopped Wilder there in that third fight, and it's like after that, like, okay, what does it take for me to like get back in the ring? Who would be the matchup there for him like that, and how many people will be interested in that? So is he going to have that mentality of like, okay, let me reset revive myself, rebuild, and go back out there and compete. And sometimes it does take like a certain type of opponent for him to kind of do that. And I don't know if there's those guys that are there at 154 currently who they have presented out to him. Are they going to be enough for him to say, hey, okay, this will be enough for me to get back in it, to say, hey, I could compete at the top of another division? Because like I said, after what happens with Canelo and Charlo, you still have to see what Jamel Charlo does after that. Whether he wins or loses. Like he said, before this fight that happened last night, he said that he said he wasn't done at 154. So if he says that he's going to come up to have the fight against Canelo, and then after that see if he can handle business at 154, then I mean that still leaves Errol Spence like figure out where he could be at at this point. So that really is something to kind of like contemplate for the career there of Errol Spence, because he's been there 147 pounds for the majority of his career, and now he's like saying, hey, I got to move up. So you move up into a division that is not the glamour division like 147. Are you going to get the purses like you were getting before? No, pretty much no. I don't think so. And will that say like he'll be like, is this good enough for me? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So we'll have to see like how he reacts to this. I know this is just like the day after, but we got to see what happens here. Few months, like 3 months, 6 months after. Where Errol Spence could be at this particular point. You know what I'm saying? So.
But to that point, Deontay Wilder responded well after he suffered something similar to this. Obviously it remains to be seen on a higher level fight, but he at least is responding how he should respond following that, though.
Right. Having that first round knockout against Robert Helenius, last year. So yeah. So
even one more wrinkle, Crawford and Spence, outside of fighting each other, do they both fight on pay-per-view going forward?
Yeah, they have to. They have to.
Well,
like I mean, that's where their purses are at. Like you can't really, do anything outside of that. Like that's where they're at. I mean, Crawford is pretty much at the top of the heap there. So you can't have any of his fights like outside of pay-per-view. That just won't happen. And with Spence, it's not like you're gonna put Spence on Showtime. They're not gonna do that. But that is going to be another issue there with Spence, is who are you going to match him up against to where it's going to be a pay-per-view type of a thing. That's similar to what happened with Wilder and Helenius. Because it's Deontay Wilder, you have to put him on pay-per-view. So here, when it comes to Errol Spence, it's Errol Spence, the former unified welterweight champion. You still have to put him on pay-per-view. So we just got to see how they're going to match him up. And I think, what they have with their promoter there, and Tom Brown and his team, they have very good matchmakers there on the team there with Tom Brown. So he'll figure out what could be next out there for Errol Spence, and Al Heyman will have an advisement as to what other options he could have here at this particular point. So we'll see how that goes. So that's what's going on. Shout out to Android there in the building, man. Good. It's been a good minute since you've been able to catch the live here, whatnot. And yeah, man, Crawford is a star. He's been, 1 and 2 trending videos on all of YouTube. He's still, trending very high. I think what it is on Twitter or something like that. Yeah. So, and that's the thing too. Like all of those videos, the all access, the weigh-in, the grand arrivals, all that type of stuff that had very high numbers. The post-fight press conference, had very high numbers across the board. So they definitely got a good amount of eyes there for Terence Crawford, for him to have this type of performance in that type of stage. That really, puts him over the top there. So you definitely will see, what he's going to be able to do at this particular point, regardless of who his opponent is going to be. There a number of people will definitely be out there to see Terence Crawford, and it's going to be in something like a T-Mobile Arena or MGM Grand Garden Arena. That's not going to be a problem there for Terence Crawford. So for him, like you were saying, man, it's the Terence Crawford era, and now it's pretty much like what's he going to do here for the rest of his career to kind of like put him up there, in the likes of who we were talking about, in previous generations, whether it's around that welterweight to middleweight division or all across the board. So we'll see how Terence Crawford ends up, finishing out his career, because hopefully, he'll fight for, another 3 or 4 fights. We'll see how he does here from this point forward, because he, kind of reports kind of like what's going to be like, hey, he would have this, deal, see what he has for 3 fights, and then after that, that's going to be it. That's a wrap. So we'll see how he's going to handle it there. So shout out to Terence Crawford for his performance there against Errol Spence Jr., getting that stoppage victory to become undisputed welterweight champion. And we'll see what he does here from this point forward. But, with that, I'm going to bring a close to this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show, man. I'm kind of hungry, man. I need some food here. And, I can't really order nothing from my brother Terrell because, of course, I'm way too far to get anything for him to deliver. You know what I'm saying? So I'll, get some grub and then, wind down here for the weekend. Big thanks for everybody that joined in here in the live with Boxing Academic, brother Terrell, brother Joseph, Lord Zoe in the building too that came in, here earlier. And also thanks for everyone that listened here live, Android and Tip and of course, who Big Chance was supposed to hear earlier, whatnot. And also JG, Troy, and Juice was able to be in the building there, and I think Bruce was able to check in as well too. So big ups to y'all for listening live, and if y'all enjoyed this, hit the like button here on the YouTube if you enjoy the content. It will be right back at it. Hopefully get in for the midweek report here on Wednesday, and then of course on Sundays 7:30 live here on YouTube. We'll have more to discuss in this particular point. But like I said at the end of every show, folks, support of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.
No more.